seafoam drummed a dull funeral rhythm against the prow of the silken sister. As dawn's first bruised light seeped across the shivering sea, Yara Greyjoy stood alone on the damp foredeck, cloak snapped by wind, gaze fixed on the pale, curled horizon where water and sky met in sickly hues of ash and pearl. Behind her, the Ironborn crew kept respectfully distant, for the night's decision, her decision, still shivered between them like the blade of a drawn axe. In the wind she could taste the old salt of pike, and the newer copper tang of something stranger, colder, older, as though the sea itself had been steeped in moonlight and left to freeze. She had accepted Euron's pact. The words clanged in her skull each time the waves slapped timber. Acceptance had not come easily, nor publicly. Her uncle's raven had reached her on Bear Island's slate shores, its message writ in a harsh, slanted hand that smelled of pitch and secrets. The Night King offers dominion over ice and sea. Stand aside or stand with me. There will be no third tide. Most would have laughed, called the note one of Euron's fevered dream boasts, but Yara had felt the chill pressing at the margins of the world these past moons. She had seen fishermen's corpses washed ashore, faces blue, eyes like cracked sapphires, had heard of night fires vanishing in an instant east of Last Hearth, snuffed out by a wind that breathed no smoke. She had not laughed. Still, choice weighed heavier than her bronzed axe. The Iron Islands forged their reavers to plunder living shores, not consort with dead kings. Yet the war for the southern kingdoms had ground on, swallowing Greyjoy's strength in sieges and fruitless raids. Allies dwindled, spoils shrank. Winter was rising fast, and winter did not favor seaborne folk. It froze anchors in harbors and gnawed oars to splinters. If Euron's mad bargain promised a tide unbound by frost, perhaps it was madness worth sharing. But sharing meant kneeling, if only for a heartbeat. A gust raked across the deck. Rigging hummed like distant mourners. Yara pressed both hands to the tarred railing and forced her thoughts back to the present. The fleet, the men, the course they followed northward toward the sea lanes off Hardhome, where Euron's flagship waited beneath an armored sky. She pictured the silence of that water, the pale sails stitched with strange sigils, and her own face reflected in them, sharp as broken mirror glass. The image jangled nerves she had thought long-tempered. Footfalls approached, a limping cadence she knew well. Harrog Meyer, once her oarmate, now her quartermaster, stopped at her elbow. His beard glittered with frost, though the sun barely peeked above the waves. "Wind's favoring us, Captain," he rasped. "We'll sight the silence before nightfall if it holds." "It will hold," Yara said, not looking at him. The words were habit more than faith. The wind cared little for mortal pacts. Harrog's broad shoulders shifted beneath sealskin. "The men are uneasy. They'd follow you into any storm, but this..." He trailed off, perhaps afraid of naming what unsettled them. Yara spared him a sidelong glance. "Uneasy blades, stay keen. Tell them that." "Near right." "Keener than White's claws," he murmured, then caught himself and added, "Louder." "Hey, Captain." She could have scolded him for the slip, reminded him fear was a luxury of Greenlanders. Yet she heard the tremor beneath his mask of salt-hard stoicism. He, like the others, had seen corpses walk along north coasts, tales borne by merchants before ice took the trading lanes. Even Ironborn guts twisted at the thought of fighting an enemy that felt neither fear nor pain. On land you could set fire to the fields to starve them. At sea, fire died in waves, and waves rolled on forever. She dismissed Harrog, then lingered at the bow, until her lips numbed. The rising sun failed to warm the wet boards beneath her boots. Eventually, she withdrew to the cramped captain's cabin, more cupboard than chamber, and unrolled Euron's letter once again on the narrow table. "To my blood and breath of the Iron Isles," the first line began. "The Night King seeks not to drown you, but to gift you the frozen depths. Ride the storm with me, niece, and the world will break like thin ice under our heels." Beneath the florid script, a dark blotch had dried. Blood, she suspected, or wine thickened to clot. She traced it with a calloused finger, then folded the parchment before dread could swell anew. Choice had been made. Now came consequence. She donned a heavier cloak of mottled gray seal fur and climbed back on deck. as noon dragged a sunless pall across the heavens. Other ships of her modest fleet bobbed in loose formation. The Storm Daughter, the Corvid's Kiss, the Rusty Ram. Their masts thrust like spears through the gloom, banners limp and sodden. She imagined, not for the first time, how those banners might soon be replaced, patched over with the sigil her uncle had described. A kraken of black ice entwined with the Night King's broken crown of jagged points. The thought sent a pulse of mingled revulsion and fascination through her. By dusk they sighted a smear upon the horizon, larger than a single hull yet too dark for an island. As they drew near, the smear resolved into a fleet. Ranks of ships carved from shadow-gray wood, sails taut yet soundless, as though moved by breath from the abyss and not by earthly wind. At their center loomed the Silence. Her hull painted a matte void so deep it seemed to devour the meager light. No shouts carried across the gap. No horns. Only the steady slap of water against blackened planks and an air of waiting, watchful as a hooded crow. Yara ordered her ships to a halt at a respectful distance. Planks groaned in protest. She stood at the rail, flanked by Harag and two bannermen, their standards drooping like wilted spears. Matching silence answered them from the opposing decks. Then a single figure detached from the Silence's forecastle, descending a rope ladder with careless grace. Euron Greyjoy landed in a waiting skiff manned by rowers whose skin gleamed pale as whale bone. The boat skimmed across the water, oars dipping without splash. Euron's eye patch caught the faint glow of the moon climbing behind low clouds. The gemstone set in its center shimmered a color Yara could not name, somewhere between bruise purple and the bruising blue of deep winter ice. When the skiff bumped, the silken sisters sighed. Euron leapt aboard, unassisted. At once, a hush rippled along Yara's deckhands. Even the rigging stilled as if wind itself dared not jostle him. He strode forward, broad mouth, slashed in a grin that displayed too many teeth. His iron crown sat crooked, closing horns dripping seawater. "Niece," he greeted, voice rich as spiced wine fouled by something metallic. "I wondered if the sea would swallow you before courage raised your sails." "Courage is easier than sense," she replied, stepping to meet him. Their boots clacked together on wet planks. "And sense tells me you've thrown in with dead men." He spread arms clad in black leather. "Dead men make the most loyal allies. They never question orders." His good eye burned bright. The socket behind the patch seemed to pulse. "What is your price?" Yara asked, controlling her breath. Behind her she sensed crew shift, hands brushing axe hafts. "Price?" Euron laughed, soft yet sharp. "For you? A seat beside me as the world drowns in night. But first, display of faith." "Words aren't faith enough?" "Words are breath, niece." "Show me blood." Yara's gut tightened. "Whose?" "Yours, if you lack imagination." He sniffed theatrically, gaze alighting upon Harag and sweeping the rest. "But better a man of salt familiar to your people. Offer him, and the Night King will mark you as brethren." Euron tapped his chest, where heart pulsed. "No resurrection trick." "He'll walk again, of course, yet not walk for you." Murmurs surged among her men. Harag stiffened, hand dropping to dagger. Yara raised a palm to still them. "You want me to kill one of my own to prove loyalty? I ask you to choose a single drop in exchange for a tide." Euron's grin widened. "Is that not iron logic? The first true test," she realized. "Accept the pact in word, but only blood sealed it." She could no longer hedge with caution. She turned slowly, eyes scanning her crew. Each man met her gaze. Some with fear, some with grim faith, a few with defiance. She felt the weight of their trust like irons on her wrists. To sacrifice one now would break something that could not be soldered back with any treasure dredged from the world's bottom. But the White Walkers would not respect half measures. Neither would Euron. Storms demanded either surrender or unyielding prow. She inhaled sharp sea wind, crisp and brutal, and stepped toward the assembled ranks. Not toward Harag, who stood ready to die if ordered, but toward the youngest among them, a boy still shy of 20 named Coral. His eyes widened, sea gray and helpless. She grasped his shoulders. He did not flinch, yet his lips parted in silent plea. Yara's throat constricted. She could almost taste the lad's terror like sour ale. It would be mercy to choose someone else, someone seasoned and prepared. But the pact required sacrifice of innocence. That was the cruelty coded in Euron's grin. The Night King favored young flesh turned cold. She drew her dagger, raven feather hilt slick from mist. The deck seemed to tilt beneath her, or perhaps her own spirit listed. Coral swallowed hard but did not step away. Ironborn were reared to meet death shoulders straight. "Forgive me," Yara whispered. Steel flashed. Blood sprung warm across her knuckles. A single clean cut across his throat, quick as she could manage. Coral's eyes glazed, surprise eclipsed by the soft release that followed. She lowered him gently. His blood pooled and trickled through the deck gaps, dripping to the gray sea below. Silence, heavy and complete, settled like snow. Euron clapped once, twice, applause echoing obscene. "Well cut, niece," the Night King smiles. "Watch." As Coral's body cooled, frost filmed his open eyes. Veins darkened to spiderweb shadows. A brittle cracking rose, faint as distant ice shifting. Before the crew could recoil, Coral's fingers twitched. He sat upright and the movement too smooth, too precise. The wound at his neck sealed, not with flesh, but with a crust of rime, a jagged collar of frozen red crystals. His mouth opened, exhaling steam that billowed white and then vanished into nothing. Empty eyes fixed on Yara without recognition. The crew stumbled back, curses strangled. Harrogg half drew his axe. Yara stood rooted, a fist of disbelief lodged beneath her breastbone. It was one thing to hear walkers, another to birth one from your own deck. The risen Coral climbed to his feet, joints clicking frost. Euron stepped aside, gesturing like a showman unveiling marvels. "Behold, our first boon." Yara forced her voice to steadiness. "He serves you now?" "He serves the cold," Euron corrected. "And through it, serves our conquest. But fear not. There will be plentiful replacements." He pivoted toward the rail and whistled. From his fleet, shapes detached. Longboats cutting water. They carried men and others. Pale figures clad in shards of icy armor. Eyes glowed glacial dark blue. The White Walkers. Yara had expected fear, revulsion, perhaps awe. Instead, she felt a curious hollow, as though watching a distant storm she once dreamed about. Reality had grown fragile. She tightened her grip on the dagger, still wet. The first of the walkers stepped aboard without ceremony. Frost bloomed where its foot touched plank. It regarded Yara through an alabaster helm, crowned with points mimicking the Night King's visage. In its hands lay a sword forged of something beyond steel, milk-pale crystal that seemed to burn cold light. The creature bowed, a gesture slow and alien. When it straightened, Yara glimpsed strange swirling runes etched along its blade, alive with subtle shimmer. She felt sudden clarity. This was no mere army of dead, but an intelligence vast and patient, older than the islands themselves. Euron moved between them. "They welcome our tide-breaking alliance." His voice carried triumphant song. "Together we'll scour Pike, Winterfell, King's Landing, all. And beyond, Old Town's libraries must hold secrets I shall plunder. Imagine spires glazed in hoarfrost, bell towers ringing the song of death." Yara forced a nod, aware every breath now committed her further. "Tell me the plan." Euron leaned in, the patchstone pulsing. "First we seal the sea. The Night King marches south beyond the wall even now. But his path inland is slow. We cripple the coasts, freeze the harbors, drive refugees inward like cattle for slaughter. Ironborn ships will shepherd the cold. Ninawas. She pictured fishing villages encased in blue ice, children crying silent behind crystallized lashes. Her stomach clenched, yet she felt power thrumming beneath Euron's words, an inevitability like tide or eclipse. To stand against it now would splinter her fleet, betray the boy she had just slain. There was only forward. "Then we sail," she said, voice iron. "But the men will need purpose beyond fear." They will have it. Euron motioned to the walker, who raised its sword horizontally. Frost crackled. Ice spires thrust up from the deck, weaving into a sigil, a kraken rod of frost, tentacles spreading across planks. The temperature plunged. Breath plumed white from every living mouth. My gift. The creature spoke, its voice like wind through broken glass. Sigil of shared fate. Even Euron blinked at the sound. The walker stepped back, melting again into stoic stillness. Yara swallowed the ache forming in her throat. She turned to her men. Some knelt, others shook, but all looked to her for anchor. Words came unbidden, a captain's litany older than charts. "We sail the sea that birthed us," she declared, voice carrying over crackling ice. "The world changes with, or without our leave. Better we carve our mark while axes are yet keen. None shall outreave the Ironborn, not even death." A ragged chorus of assent met her, thin but growing. She saw Harag stand straighter, though his eyes never left the inverted face of risen coral. Night deepened. Torches were forbidden. The walkers despised flame. Instead, blue-lipped lanterns hung along masts, their cold ghost light revealing swirls of frost creeping over rigging. The Ironborn fleet stood reborn, half alive, half claimed by chill. Yara retired briefly to her cabin. She scrubbed Coral's blood from her hands until skin reddened. When she emerged, she found her uncle conversing with a cluster of walkers at the bow, their gestures sparse, language wordless yet eloquent. She watched unnoticed, marveling at his ease. The pirate king had always danced with devils, but now he waltzed with apocalypse. A soft creak behind her. "Harag, Captain," he whispered, eyes shadowed. "There's talk among the crew. Some think we've sailed beyond iron law." "We have," she answered flatly. "Steel your heart. That walker, it spoke. I heard. What did it cost to make it speak?" He pressed. Pain etched across his brow. "Everything still owed," she said. "And more will yet pay." He nodded once, resigned, and left. Yara exhaled. She touched the dagger at her hip, memory of warm blood vivid. The gods of salt and stone had never demanded more of her than on this dusk. By midnight, Euron signaled the fleet. Sails unfurled like wings of night. The walkers moved through the rigging with impossible lightness, their presence hoarfrost weightless. As wind filled canvas, the temperature plummeted further until seawater along each hull glazed white. Ships began leaving rigid wakes, narrow corridors of ice that did not break behind them but extended, unspooling like sheets of glass across the waves. Yara felt the ship's timbers vibrate with new, frightening strength. The sea groaned beneath its sudden shell. Stars overhead brightened in the cold, cleared sky, and the moon turned sharp as honed silver. In that pale radiance, she saw forms stirring beneath the distant waves, half-seen shapes, as if ghosts drifted within black depths. She gripped the wheel, though Walker helmsman now guided each vessel with gestures alone, manipulating currents Yara could not feel. She supposed her action symbolic, but symbolism mattered. Her men needed their captain visible. Hours slipped by, the fleet sweeping southward along the eastern coast of the north, leaving a white scar upon dark water. Soon they would near Widow's Watch and White Harbor beyond, where Manderley banners fluttered above stone walls, still believing in mundane winters. Those banners would freeze mid-flap under the new cold. Yara's heart hammered, not with excitement but with brutal awareness of step taken past all return. She wished she could recall Coral's last smile, but memory already faltered, replaced by the icy mask he now wore in silence behind her. As dawn grayed once more, she spotted gulls spiraling overhead, confused by the sudden island of ice where none should be. Their cries cracked the hush, lonely and alarmed. Some alighted on the ice trailing them, only to spring away again as frost leapt up their legs. A few fell still, wings outspread, transformed into delicate sculptures Yara knew would outlast sun and storm alike. Euron appeared beside her, cloak ringing faintly with frost crystals. Magnificent, is it not? Even gods must shiver. She did not answer. She watched the horizon where a faint glow hinted at White Harbor's lanterns. Soon the cold tide would reach those lights and snuff them. She imagined the port's cheerful fishmongers, the children chasing gulls across piers, the slow tolling bells. In her mind's ear the bells began to crack. "Niece," Euron murmured, voice gentle and poisonous. "Rejoice. You chose the winning side." Yara's eyes stayed fixed ahead. "We'll see who wins when there's naught left to rule." Her voice carried no triumph, only a grim vow to ride this storm until hulls splintered or the sea itself turned to dust. In the frozen stillness she sensed the walkers standing sentinel, their gaze a weight on her skin. She braced against the wheel, against dread, against the echoing gratitude of the dead boy, whose consent she had never asked. The fleet advanced, sails black and full, over a sea gone deaf under ice, toward a dawn that promised only the white simplicity of oblivion. A faint blush of dawn smeared the sky when the flotilla of ice-shadowed ships rounded the headland west of Widow's Watch. The cliffs there, once iron-brown and striated in an ochre, gleamed a dead white beneath the crust that followed Euron's fleet, a rime thick enough to shuffle shape of shoreline into jagged ridges like fractured dragon glass. No gull cried now. Those that tried had fallen as small white meteors onto their own petrified shadows. Wind moaned under the new burden of cold, scouring through the rigging with notes so high they scarcely reached mortal ears. Yara stood at the prow, while the walkers guided every sail and oar as though the very sea were a chessboard long studied. Beside them, iron-born helmsmen had become passengers, their shoulders rigid with the knowledge that their skills, hard-won across decades, were now toys shoved aside by children of winter's first age. She thought of the old tales her mother had woven in the women's chambers of Pike, krakens that sang storms, spirits who walked the sea's black belly and devoured ships whole. The present vision felt like those legends dragged bloody into daylight. Yet daylight itself withdrew. A meek guest turned from the hall. The sun's disk lost its vigor behind thick, low ash cloud, until the world seemed stuck forever between gloaming and midnight. Far to starboard the mandally banners of White Harbor fluttered above distant watchtowers, blue and white emblazoned with the leaping merman, though the colors were dulled now by frost film. Yara's lips tingled with the memory of salt, but what rose from the shivering sea today smelled of nothing, tasted of nothing. Even the ocean's ancient brine had faded beneath a crust of magic that leached life from water and air alike. A horn sounded from the town's outer seawalls. One, twice, thrice, alarm. Manderley lookouts had spotted the silent armada gliding over an iron-stiff sea. They would not yet know what they faced. No scout survived to spread word south of the wall that White Walkers commanded water now. They would guess Greyjoy raiders and ready ballistae, galleys, torches, pots of oily pitch. None would matter. Euron joined her at the prow, eye glittering ravenous. Frost spangled his dark beard like shards of mica. "Beautiful," he crooned, gesturing to the harbor city arranged in gentle tiers behind its crescent seawall. A jewel of trade and fish, about to be set in purest ice. Imagine Manderley's fat lord kneeling before death he cannot bribe. Yara's throat tightened. White Harbor was good plunder to us once. Its people fear our sigil. Must they be frozen to puppets? We could demand capitulation, gain ships, and coin. Euron chuckled. Coin weighs heavy in cold pockets, and ships of wood burn poorly on ice. What use to us? We will have hosts of the undead more loyal than Ironborn, more tireless than oarsmen. You saw the boy rise. Soon a city will stand, obedient as a dog. Danda. She pictured children petrified mid-laughter. Old Maester Theomore, whom she had once ransomed for pearls, lying with quill clenched in blue fingers. There is cruelty enough in reaving, she muttered. This is different. Different is destiny, he answered, then raised his hand. A walker drifted forward. Its eyes, bottomless sapphire, reflected the harbor lights. With a single jerk of its pale blade toward the shore, the fleet shifted course without shouted orders, as though ships themselves felt the tug. The silken sister skated ahead on its sheath of new ice, silent as nightmare. Other ironborn vessels arrayed behind, sails slack. No wind fueled them, only some unspoken impetus of cold. As they neared the breakwater, hoarse shouts swelled from defender walls. Catapults loosed flaming clay pots. The projectiles fizzled the instant they struck the ghost-glazed water, steam gusting upward and freezing mid-air into chandeliers that tink-tinked as they shattered across the ice. A ship from White Harbor, the Silverfin, cut from moorage, oars chopping to intercept. Brave fools, Yara thought. Its hull creaked as it parted the crust, but every stroke grew slower. Ice thickened greedily about the prow like claws of glass. By the time the galley closed half the distance, its wake had solidified behind it, locking it in place. Rowers abandoned oars and scrambled for deck hooks. Archers nocked arrows, their breath clouds instantly crusting on bowstrings. Euron signaled. A walker at the Silence's railing lifted a spear of translucent crystal and hurled it underhand. It hissed through air too cold for whistling and struck the Silverfin amidships. The wood gave a sigh. Then from the impact point, a bloom of hoarfrost pulsed outward, racing along planks, up masts, across rigging. Sailcloth flashed white, stiffened, then cracked. Men froze mid-cry, limbs flowering with lacework of snow until they became statues of salt and sorrow. Within breaths, the entire galley was a sculpture. When the incoming tide of ice finally crushed its hull, it shattered like thin porcelain. Some of Yara's own crew wretched at the sight. Harig stood near the mainmast, jaw clenched hard enough to squeak teeth. Yet none turned weapons on the walkers. The memory of Coral's resurrection was fresh as open wound. Defiance was a candle in blizzard, bright, brief. Yara felt the wheel dead in her hands, steering ropes rhymed, gears locked. These ships would obey her no more than White Harbor would resist. And still she clung, for form's sake, to prove she had not surrendered everything. But when she gazed within, she saw a tide erasing all maps drawn of her heart. The Silence glided into the outer harbor, in a hush broken only by distant screams. Pier pilings cracked, waterfalls of splinters dusted in snow. Fish markets where lanterns once swung jovially were curtains of hard ice. Yara watched as townsfolk raced along quays, their frantic footprints freezing behind them. Some attempted flight by small boats, but found the water stiff. Their oars scraped helplessly against rising sheets that thickened as they pushed. Others tripped and crawled, only to find frost creeping over their hands like predatory ivy. It seemed the air itself devoured heat, each gasp a theft. Yet one pocket of defiance flared. From a bastion near the new gate, Manderley soldiers formed a line, wool coats layered beneath half-plate, shields rimmed in fur. At their head stood Sir Marlon Manderley, third son of Lord Wyman, sword raised, voice choked but steady as he shouted for the garrison to hold ground. A horn blasted again, urgent, bravado embalmed in fear. The walkers answered with silence. They filed forward along the frozen harbor, their crystal swords held level. Behind them shambled the first corpses of the city, dockhands, fishwives, children, all eyes dead sapphire, movements jerky, hunger directionless until minds of the walkers shaped it. A few ironborn, those from Euron's own crews who had died before the Pact, also strode among them, salt-stiff braids now frosted to white. Yara's gaze snagged on the corpse of Coral, marching at the walker vanguard. Bloodless cheeks gleamed moon-pale, throat encircled by rosy ice scar. She swallowed bile but turned at a sudden commotion on her deck. A cluster of her sailors, 3 men and 1 woman, surged toward the rail, axes drawn. "We fight monsters, not serve them," cried the woman. Scanna Stonehand, her single gauntleted hand gripping a throwing hatchet. Before Yara could command stay, Scanna hurled her weapon at a walker, striding abreast the silken sister. The blade flew true, burying into the creature's chest with a muffled thunk. It snapped to a halt. Frost spider-webbed the metal, encasing it. The walker did not stagger. It merely turned its head, expression unreadable, beneath ice crown. With one smooth gesture, it plucked the hatchet free. The iron edge crumbled into dust between its fingers. Scanna cursed and reached for another weapon. But blue flame, cold, soundless, burst from the walker's palm and washed over her like a tidal caress. Where it touched, armor and flesh vitrified into brittle frost sculpture. She froze mid-snarl, a statue of rebellion. Her companions stumbled back, eyes wide with ruin. Frost spread across deck, hungry for more. Yara jerked forward, but Euron laid a gloved hand on her arm, pressure as irresistible as iron manacle. "Let the lesson stand," he murmured. "Enough lessons," she hissed, shrugging free. She strode to face her crew, voice iron. "Any further defiance and I'll cut you myself." The words burned like molten lead. She saw their betrayal mirrored in their stares, but she also saw fear subdue hope. No more axes lifted. When she turned, she found the walker watching her. She sensed satisfaction, though its face held no emotion. A realization glimmered. The walkers needed Euron's madness, but they valued her command of ironborn discipline. She was to be the bridge between death's cold logic and mortal will. That knowledge settled on her like second cloak. "Death shall." She returned to the prow in time to witness the garrison's last stand. Ser Marlon charged, blade raised, into the widening ring of frost. His soldiers roared behind him, boots skidding on glassy ground. For one heartbeat, Yara admired their bravery, that stubborn northern fiber that had long resisted ironborn raids. Then the walkers advanced, swords meeting steel with a sound like icicles breaking. Each clash birthed a crackle of freezing air that leapt along metal, freezing joints, stopping hearts. Shields shattered, men stiffened and toppled, brittle flesh sharding upon impact. Ser Marlon fought with desperate fury, hacking at a walker's leg. His blade glanced off, snapped in two. Frost lanced up his arm. He screamed, but the scream cut short as ice clamped lungs. He fell, half frozen, and rose seconds later under blue dominion. Yara closed her eyes a moment, seeing his father Lord Wyman, who once paid her weight in silver to ransom captives. None of that silver would matter now. In less than an hour, White Harbor fell. The Wolf's Den, a towering prison keep, fought longest. Stone walls do not freeze, but the men within did. When its gates eventually swung open, a wave of newly dead gushed forth, joining the army, rimming the city like snakes of smoke-blue silhouettes. Euron watched from the Silken Sisters' quarterdeck, arms spread. "Behold your new fleet, niece," he exclaimed. "A city's worth of crew, tireless as the tide." She felt her gorge rise. "Crew cannot sail ships. Once wood is brittle. They need not sail," he purred. "They are the ships." He gestured to the harbor. The walkers raised their arms. From the frozen docks, timbers cracked. Pilings snapped, and whole wooden hulls tore free, borne upward, not by tide but by frost columns that thrust them above the bay like dark blooms. Dead men clambered onto these aerial platforms. A deep, resonant creak rolled over the water, the drawn-out groan of a world rearranging. Yara gaped as the wooden shapes fused with ice, keels knitting to glacial underbodies, sails replaced by translucent sheets that unfurled organically as if grown stiff as crystal wings. Ship after ship metamorphosed into vessels neither wholly wood nor ice. Creatures of the cold, commanded by walkers who stepped onto elevated prows as naturals ascend thrones. Euron laughed until tears froze on his cheeks. Westeros will remember today as the dawn. The sea itself joined the Great Other. Dread seeped through Yara's bones, not wholly for the living but for herself. She had crossed a threshold into realms where the laws she had trusted, steel over soft flesh, tide over wood, were irrelevant. Now, she served powers, sculpting reality to nightmare. Still, she had chosen, and choice bound iron. The walkers conferred, speechless yet speaking. Yara understood enough. A host would march inland to meet the Night King's legions advancing from the last river valley. Another host would sail south along the narrow sea, spreading cold to Sisterton, Gulltown, Duskendale. Euron demanded to lead that wave, his crown of driftwood already frosting into a circlet of white coral. The walkers assented, though Yara sensed they indulged him like a jester. He promised her second command of the Ice Fleet and a black-crowned kraken banner to fly over every conquered port. She listened, nodding, but inside wrestled with an unfamiliar specter: regret. The Ironborn way was cruelty, yes, yet Greenlanders called them great sea wolves, not arbiters of the world's end. Even reavers prized life, if only for the scream at the moment of taking. What thrill lay in plundering a land grown silent, its people statues? Night fell swift again, though day had barely broken. Beneath ghost moons of cloud, the harbor refroze smoother, erasing footprints, swallowing bodies loose on streets. Yara ordered her men to quarters, posted watches she knew were symbolic. She sought refuge in her cabin, though frost made its walls glitter like a cave. On the table lay her dagger, still stained where Skana Stonehand's hatchet had crumbled. She removed gauntlets, cradled blade hilt. The metal leached warmth from her veins. She considered pressing edge to her palm, pain to affirm that blood still came warm, red, human. A knock. Soft, urgent. Harrig slipped inside and closed door. His breath fogged. "Captain, word from men. They whisper of leaving, taking the Storm Daughter east under dark." "They'd never outrun this," she murmured, gesturing vaguely to walls of ice. "Sea will freeze behind them. Better to die at sea free than walk beneath ice." She met his eyes, found still the spark that once sang sea songs with her under Pike's cliffs. "Have you such plan? We could slip on tide at first moonrise, sail south ahead of ice crust. We could warn the Reach, the Kingslanders. Tell them winter rides the waves." Yara thought of Euron's vanguard, ice galley wings, walker spears. They wouldn't believe. And if they did, what good? Lannister gold can't melt this frost. Harrig's shoulders sagged. "So we become their heralds instead." "We survive," she said, though the word tasted weak. "Survive and bide time." She leaned in, lowered voice. "The walkers trust our blades now. If there's chance to shatter them later, someone must remain close." "That's..." He stared. Small hope, flickering. "You would strike them. When strike matters. Till then, hold crew. Let none desert. Deserters will only feed the army of dead." She squeezed his arm. "Steel your heart, brother." He swallowed, nodded. "Hey, Captain." As he turned to leave, he paused. "Coral is chained with others below. They corral the dead for now. Some men volunteer watch. Others cannot bear to look upon him." Yara's chest ached. "He's kept from harm. He deserves that much." Harrig blinked, incredulous. "Harm. Dignity then," she amended. "Deny the walkers their sport." He left. Yara sat alone again. She stared at dagger until its image blurred. Eventually she slept, head on arms, in dreamless cold. The next morning, Euron summoned captains to the Wolf's Den, now throne hall of icy spires. Staircases once mossed stood slick and shimmering. Banners of House Stark and Manderley lay crushed beneath glaze. On the floor of the great hall, a new map had formed. Westeros etched in frost. River valleys traced in delicate rills of hoar. Mountain ranges raised like crenellations. Euron stalked its perimeter, stamping boots that cracked small kingdoms under heel. Walkers glided behind, wordless tutors. "We split our dominion," he declared. "I sail south along the eastern coast, sowing winter seeds. Yara will bear west, across the Bight, to Shield Islands, the Arbor, Old Town's throat. We sever Reach from river realms, Starve King's landing of grain. The Night King meets us in the south when all is quiet." Some Ironborn captains crossed themselves to drowned God. Others grinned feral, intoxicated by apocalypse. Yara studied the frost map. Her route carved through seas she once raided for gold and wine. Now she would carry only silence and frost. Yet the west, there lay possibilities. Old Town's high tower stored glass candles, Valyrian secrets. Citadel masters whispered of dragonfire, obsidian, ancient spells. If solutions existed, perhaps they slept in that library maze. She might carry cold there only to let warmth bloom again. "A sound plan," she voiced. She knelt to press a finger on the map where the arbor sat. Frost hissed under her touch. She imagined vineyards withering, casks cracking. "I will see it done." Euron's grin thinned. You hesitate at no cruelty. Good. He tossed a pouch. Inside, a thin shard of ice crystal. Gift from the walkers. Plunge it into any living heart. The heart will beat again, but for us. Field conversions, you might say. Yara pocketed it with a nod, though revulsion coiled. A tool, she told herself. Weapon, and maybe eventual key, if turned. The council dissolved. Crews returned to ships. Ice galleys berthed overnight by walker rights. Wood rails ribbed with hoarfrost chimed like glass bells. As Yara stepped aboard her new flagship, the Deep Blue Doom, a name chosen by her men in grim jest, she felt hull vibrate with heartbeat of cold tide. On deck, Herrig awaited, expression set. Orders, Captain? We sail west at dusk, hugging ice crust. Break only to plunder stores and convert coastal villages. She pitched voice for others to hear. Spare strong hulls and ironworks. We'll need them for our own. Men saluted, though eyes slid away quickly. No songs greeted embarkation. Only squeal of rigging transformed to frozen sinew. That evening, sun sagged wearily behind veils of cloud, painting world in bruised colors. The fleet split. Euron's banner turned south. Yara's west. A walker helmsman, once a free folk raider judging by patchwork, furs fused to his now crystal flesh, took station near her. Blue flames licked quiet along his sword edge but did not drip or flicker. As the Deep Blue Doom glided around the last promontory of the harbor, Yara risked one final glance toward White Harbor. In the failing light, thousands of figures lined the seawall. New dead. Watching their conquerors leave, she recognized the stout silhouette of Lord Wyman himself, face lost to icy mask. He raised an arm in mechanical salute to passing ships, as if bidding safe voyage. The sight stabbed deeper than any spear. Night fully fell. Stars glittered hard like chips of broken blade across a sky shorn of warmth. The fleet moved swift upon unnatural current. Sailors swore they felt no roll, only smooth sliding as though hulls skimmed pane of dark glass. Yara descended to cargo deck where the dead were penned. Iron cages rhymed white. Coral stood at front, hands limp against bars not truly restraining him. He simply awaited command. His eyes, once timid, now twin voids. She touched bars. Frost burned her fingers. He did not react. She whispered his name, though she knew he no longer contained the sound. Footsteps behind, Harag again. Why do you torture yourself? She kept gaze on Coral. Remind me what we lost, so I know when sacrifice is repaid. When? She turned. When heat returns. She pressed the shard Euron gifted into his palm. Hide this. Not with your other blades. Someday, if I say, the shard goes to a walker's heart. Man now. He studied it, shivered passing over features. And us? We unfreeze Coral, or we die trying. It was promise, prayer, condemnation all at once. Herrig slipped crystal into belt pouch. I'll see it done. She exhaled. Frost plumbing. Tell no one yet. Not until I see Old Town's spire. He nodded and left. Yara lingered until cold seeped through boots. She met Coral's eyes again. Snowlight flickered there like distant lantern lost on black sea. She touched bars once more, then turned away. Above, the mast groaned as a gust finally stirred. Natural wind, weak but honest. It rattled rigging and set sails trembling. Yara climbed back to deck. She drew cloak tighter, just as the first flakes of genuine snow, born not of magic, but of passing clouds, began to fall, swirling delicate about the frost-steeped world. They seemed mundane, almost gentle, in contrast to the cataclysm she rode. She tilted head back, letting them dust her face. Each flake melted. Her skin still warm enough for that. Tiny beads of water tracked down cheeks before freezing to salt ice. She ignored sting, eyes fixed forward to the dark horizon where the western sea awaited, untouched, for now. As midnight bells somewhere beneath the ice told phantom echoes, the Deep Blue Doom and her sister ships slipped into the Bite's great maw, carrying a queen without crown, a fleet without warmth, and a plan hidden like ember beneath blanket of endless night. Clouds massed over the bight like wolves crowding a carcass, their ragged underbellies reflecting an auroral sheen of ghostlight cast by the ice fleet's sleek, unnatural hulls. The deep blue doom cut the water far faster than any mortal vessel had right to travel. Wind scarcely stirred, yet the ship glided as if a hidden current, impervious to cold, thrummed only for its keel. Barnacles sheared away in thin, tinkling ribbons of frost at the bow's knife edge. On the quarterdeck, Yara Greyjoy felt each shiver of that secret engine through the soles of her boots. The vibration started small in the planks, and climbed steadily up her bones until even her teeth chimed in time. She trusted it no more than she trusted the walkers. But there was strange comfort in regularity. The relentless beat reminded her she still lived, still felt, still had cause to resist. The ice fleet comprised 9 vessels now. Yara's Doom and its 6 ironborn sisters, Storm Daughter, Rusty Ram, Black Halberd, Crow's Fray, Maiden Reaver, and Gull Gutter, plus 2 full ice galleys conjured entire from White Harbor's frozen docks. Those conjured ships bore no wood, save a few ornamental figureheads trapped forever in clear columns of crystalline ice. The walkers preferred those. No nails to pry, no deck to splinter. They glided ahead like sharks haunting the lead. 3 of the walkers served as admirals over the Western Armada. The first, whom Yara called Frosthelm for the crown of broken stalactites fused to its brow, stood silent near the wheel most nights. A second, Ice Harrier, roosted in the prow netting, scouting for distant coastlines through eyes that glowed as blue as drowned stars. The third, Sable Rime, wandered from ship to ship on bridges of ice that the sea obligingly raised, murmuring in its soundless tongue commands that made masts creak and hulls change direction without a turn of rudder. In their presence, Yara's flesh goose pimpled, not from cold. The cold had long since become part of her, but from the awful stillness they exuded, like standing near the heart of a glacier and hearing nothing, not even her own pulse. She had grown used to gauging the humors of her men by the speed of their breaths. Some exhaled quick, shallow, those were nearest panic. Others held breath altogether in silent dread. Harag, alone among them, forced himself to inhale slow and steady, as if daring the frost to crystallize in his lungs. Every dusk, when northerly lights shimmered in ribbons of sickly green over the horizon, he made his rounds across the decks, slapping shoulders, murmuring reassurance. Captain's quartermaster he might be, but with each passing league he became also her tether, a man who vacuumed despair from dark corners so it could not pool and freeze. 2 days out from White Harbor, they skirted the island of Skagos. Rocky peaks jutted like knuckles punching through snowdrifts. Normally its inhabitants, proud cannibal clansmen, lit warning fires at any approaching sail. Now only bare stones greeted them, every ridge glazed. One of the ice galleys veered shoreward. Frosthelm gestured. A dozen dead leapt into pitch-dark surf. They did not sink. The sea beneath them hardened into a path. They marched inland, carrying no torches, only weapons of cracked crystal. When they did not return by dawn, Sable Rime shrugged. If walkers could shrug. And the fleet moved on. Whatever transpired on Skagos, Yara could guess well enough. There would be no more fires from those peaks. Past Skagos, the fleet angled southwest toward Cape Kraken, a cape Yara once raided for sheep and timber in giddy youth. She remembered singing shanties there under summer stars, laughter echoing off grassy cliffs as sheep bled into pails. Now she heard only the susurrus of flakes skittering across frozen rigging. Memory felt like wine left too long in flagon. Sour, distant, unreachable. During the third night's watch, Harag found her by the mainmast, hands curled around a lantern whose pale blue witchlight held no heat. He nodded at the walker perched above. Thing hasn't moved an inch in hours. Could carve it for figurehead and none would know. Yara allowed a grim half-smile. Don't. The figurehead might carve back. He lowered voice. The shard you gave me. I secured it inside an oilskin, tucked in ballast where cold's thickest. No crew will find it accidental. Good. She studied the stars, bright pinpricks, merciless. We near the Shield Islands by next dusk. Aye. Scouts say the Mander fleet winters there. Scouts? She echoed. You mean the Watchers, birds? Harrod grimaced. Earlier that morning, an eerie flock of ravens, eyes glimmering frozen sapphire, had circled the foremast. One alighted on Frosthelm's outstretched hand, delivered silent knowledge, then burst into a swirl of ice dust. The crew still whispered about it. Whatever they are, Harag muttered. Words the Lord of the Shield Archipelago keeps 36 longships ready, plus Greenlander kite boats. She traced Call's thumb along grimy dagger hilt. Then we take them, but we won't kill everyone. Harag arched a brow. Mercy. Strategy. Her breath fogged between them. We need prisoners, living ones. Skilled shipwrights, maesters, smiths. Dead can't craft wildfire or fix a burnt-out engine. Old Town holds flame lore, Dragonstone's glass, but only breathing minds can wield knowledge. We start collecting them now. Linny. He nodded, but worry tugged at his beard. Walkers won't favor sparing lives. We'll convince them. She glanced up at Frosthelm's rigid form. They understand utility. They raise coral for demonstration, but they know some things are better alive. She hoped. The conversation ceased when the walker's head pivoted owl-swift to regard them. Ice crackled along its armored neck. The thing inspected Yara's eyes for a long pulse of silence. She stared back, unblinking, projecting confidence. At last it resumed stillness, apparently satisfied or uninterested. Harrod exhaled slow. Careful, he said after it turned. Frozen statues may not blink, but they observe. Let them. She handed him the witch lantern and walked aft. In her cabin, she spread a stained parchment, Euron's frost map, stolen during council. With charcoal she sketched the Shield Islands, Grey Shield, Green Shield, Oaken Shield, and South Shield, circling dockyards where she'd once anchored stolen cogs to ransom noble passengers. She marked tallies for stores rumored. Grain barns, sailcloth warehouses, vineyards, saltpeter pits. At the bottom she wrote a single name, Maester Kenning, a healer rumored stationed at Green Shield Keep, who had studied Dragonbone properties before the Targaryens fell. If Kenning still breathed, she would have him. Sleep came fitful, dreams of drowned krakens and snow-whipped seas. She woke to crew shapes whispering outside door. Fearful news. A ship trailing them had broken ice path and vanished. On deck, she learned the Gullgutter had been overrun by rebel Ironborn, unwilling to sail further. They'd scuttled their vessel, set torches to barrels of pitch, hoping to burn rather than freeze. Flame roared high, and promptly died as air around combusted fuel crystallized. The ship collapsed inward, hull plates fusing into a sculpture of ash-black ice. Rebel sailors tried to leap, but walkers on Storm Daughter pierced them with javelins of rime. Fallen rebels rose blue-eyed upon hitting the water, clambering onto flotsam to rejoin chase of their surviving brothers. Yara watched in grim silence. Lesson number 2. Fire no longer offered Ironborn a clean exit. By dawn the shields lay ahead. 4 green gems rising from shining pewter sea, ringed by gentle surf. Only the surf was gone now, replaced by jagged rings of gray-white expanding outward even before the fleet's approach. Yara ordered sails trimmed to half to manage formation, but the ships ignored. Unseen currents propelled them. She turned to Frosthelm. Slow, she demanded. It replied with a single gesture. The dune's hum softened enough for mainsail to slacken. She exhaled relief. Some shred of command remained. Oakenshield Keep was first target. The fortress crowned steep cliffs above terraced fields of barley. Masts of Mander galleys jutted from its sheltered cove like spears. As the ice fleet glided silently in, watchmen atop the redstone beacon shouted warnings, bells clanging. Yet morale inside the keep was high. They believed they knew Ironborn tactics. Hit, loot, burn, retreat. They had no fear of winter tide in midsummer. They learned swiftly. The Doom rammed through boom chains protecting harbor mouth. Ice formed a ramp under her bow. Dead men spilled forward, not clambering down rope ladders, but walking directly onto water congealing into walkway. Arrows rained from parapets. Some found undead flesh, lodging without blood. Others struck live ironborn forced into vanguard. By Sabelrhine's orders, to blunt defenders for the more valuable White Shock troops. Harag led front ranks. Yara fought her instinct to shield him. He accepted risk by choice. Instead, she attended another task, capturing the keep's master smiths alive. She leapt from rail onto frozen quay, boots skidding. A living defender rushed her, spear point trembling. In the name of House Tyrell. He never finished. She pivoted, slashed, hamstringing him. He dropped with a grunt, but still breathing. The shard could make of him a revenant later if the walkers desired. But for now, warm blood was currency. She ordered 2 ironborn to drag him behind lines. Inside the keep walls, chaos mushroomed. Livestock squealed, dogs howled, townsfolk fled deeper into storerooms. Walkers strode systematically through courtyards, weapons trailing frost that crept along flagstones. Where living foes grouped, a walker would thrust its blade into cobbles. Frost webbed outward, snatching ankles, immobilizing whole knots of men so whites could harvest at leisure. Yara moved with her chosen squad, 8 sailors she trusted, Harag included when he found her after disabling harbor chains. Their target, the library tower where Maester Kelvin, not Kenning, resided according to captured steward. Kenning apparently had died years prior of lung fever, but Kelvin had studied Valyrian texts on Dragonforge steel. Not ideal, but living knowledge still. They fought up spiral stairs, slick with ice. At top, hidden behind bronze-reinforced oak door, Kelvin cowered among scroll racks. He was a stooped man with ink-dark hands, spectacles cracked down one lens, yet he brandished a rust-spotted dirk. "Stay back, Reaver!" he shouted as Yara kicked door inward. Harag disarmed him with hook of axe. Yara stepped close. "You value life, Maester?" Quaver, taut. "Oh, yes. Come quietly, you'll keep breath." She gestured to noise outside. Screams muffled by frost. "Refuse and walk again under blue." "Choose." Kelvin's eyes darted. He swallowed. "I will come." Yara bound his hands loosely, enough to pacify watchers, not enough to bruise. Then ushered him down tower. Outside gates, Oakenshield had fallen. Whites herded villagers in lines where Frosthelm passed, grazing skull with fingertip, turning them obedient pale subjects. Yara's stomach twisted. One by one, living sparks snuffed. But she marched onward. On quay, she found a living cluster of shipwrights. 5 carpenters, 2 sailmakers, rounded by ironborn. Good. She herded them aboard. When Frosthelm observed, it nodded once. Utility recognized. By nightfall, Greyshield fell likewise, though resistance stiffer. Lady Alleria Grim unleashed wildfire barrels from battlements, gouts of green flames searing first white ranks. For heartbeats, Yara believed true fire might triumph, but walkers reacted. They thrust blades into stone, summoning a wind so piercing it snuffed flames mid-roar. The gust crystallized wildfire's vapor into emerald frost that rained shards across courtyard, like bitter glass confetti. Alleria died fighting, skewered by 3 whites, yet her final act spared many retainers time to escape via postern path. Yara watched handfuls flee into woods before walkers sealed gates behind ice. She did not point them out. They would warn Old Town faster than ravens. Good. South must know doom sailed. 2 shields left. Each conquest swelled ranks with new whites tethered by the walker's will. Among them, Yara recognized more of her own ironborn fallen. Faces slack, eyes burning. She kept her expression stone when they shuffled past. After campaign closed, the fleet anchored in lagoon beyond Greenshield to take inventory. Provisions, prisoner count, state of hulls. Yara convened meeting in her cabin with Harag and Maester Kelvin. The Maester's wrists now free. He hunched over steaming mug of eel broth. One of few stores not yet frozen solid, thanks to insulated cauldron. Kelvin's voice trembled as he spoke. "You spared me." "Why?" "The others. They do not require healers." Yara tapped dagger on map. Spread across desk. "I need healer, scholar. Alchemist. We sail next to Old Town. There you'll identify for me which texts, vaults, substances cripple White Walkers. He paled. I have only theoretics, leggings. Better than none. She leaned forward. Tell me of dragonglass, of black blood steel, of fire that burns in shadow. Kelvin swallowed. Dragonglass, obsidian, was forged in volcanoes of Valyria. Cold Ridge exit. Legends claim it wounds the others permanently. She recalled stories Jon Snow once told crowds at Winterfell Moot. Dragonglass daggers slaying whites. She considered her shard hidden in ballast. It resembled ice, not obsidian, but maybe the reverse had equal potency. Fire birth slays cold. Valyrian steel also kills, Kelvin continued. But forging lost. Citadel holds few blades. Hideour's vault may contain caches. Nand. How do we take them without walkers seizing for own? Yara gasped. Walkers will not wield forged flame steel, Yara said. But they may destroy it. She eyed Kelvin. We must secure blades secretly. Kelvin nodded, trembling anew. There's also the Blackfire Forge rumor. An alloy tempered with dragon bone ash. If bone still exists, Harrod grunted. Dragonstone. Too far east, Yara murmured. Euron intends coastal sacking before interior. But if he reaches Eastwatch, he could claim eggs rumored in ruins. Kelvin cleared throat. Aegon's High Hill Library once possessed spells of binding flame to stone. With correct ritual, he can be summoned even in deep winter. Yara's mind raced. She angled dagger at map. Old Town first. We capture Hightower, subdue Citadel, lift what knowledge we need, then sabotage fleet. Harrod blinked. You say sabotage aloud. He hears, Yara said, nodding toward deck above where Frosthelm patrolled. Yet Walker does not understand sabotage, only function. Kelvin sipped broth, hand steadier. They sense fear but not nuance. Exactly. She traced line from shields to whispering sound. We depart tomorrow tide. When Harrod left to arrange watch, Yara remained with Kelvin. She studied his tired features. Do not betray me, Maester. Walker's gift second life unpleasant. He bowed head. I serve knowledge, Captain. Serve life too, she replied, surprising herself. That night she visited the pens again. She found Coral standing near bars, eyes blank. She spoke quietly, telling him Oakenshield's children still alive somewhere. How she would one day melt Frost and set him free. He gave no sign, but she noticed a faint tremor along his jaw. Wind, maybe, or some buried response. She touched ice-cold cheek, withdrew before numbness spread to her hand. Dawn walls of Greenshield abandoned castle, glimmered rose under first sunbeam. Sun still fought, if losing. The fleet launched. At Yara's order, they kept 4 living captives on deck in warmth of brazier. Reminders to Ironborn that living breath mattered, and to walkers that prisoners served purpose. Frosthelm inspected them, traced fingertip near but not touching skin, perhaps measuring ebb of fear. It made no objection. On second days, sail toward the arbor. A violent squall rolled off Sunset Sea. Thunderheads black as pitch, streaks of silver lightning clawing waves. Natural weather not conjured. Walkers seemed indifferent, yet Yara's sailors cowered under booms rattling in wind. The doom met waves head-on, prow smashing spray into glassy shards. During Storm's Eye, Harrod scrambled to Yara's side. Stormdaughter's helm jammed. Crew losing control. She glanced at Frosthelm. It stared across deck mid-gust, uninterested. These ships rely on magic path, not wheel. Lightning disrupts. We must board them. Now. With rope about waist, she leapt into Maelstrom, crossing to Stormdaughter on ice sheet, bridging the gap. Rain hammered like nails. Each droplet that touched deck crusted instantly. She found crew frantically bailing where hold seam cracked. A walker aboard stood unmoving. Yara seized wheel, though motionless. Calm voice cut through roar. Plug seam with sailcloth. Pack tar, cold will seal. Sailors obeyed. Hearts warmed by mortal leadership, instead of undead silence. When Patch held, Yara fixed Walker with glare. "Keep them afloat, or your supply of dead ends." The creature's eyes narrowed with unreadable thought, but after a moment it lifted hand. Hull creaked, frost crystals interlocked along crack, reinforcing tar. Storm calmed. Yara felt flicker of triumph. She could manipulate walkers through logic if not command. Later, back aboard Doom, Harrod produced the shard again. Storm nearly shattered code. Should we act sooner? Not yet. She turned toward the Arbor's distant shadow. Let Euron hear a whisper that Yara's fleet thrives. 3 dawns later, vines of the Arbor filled horizon, rolling hills fragrant, with last harvest still untouched by snow. The walkers advanced thirstily. Vineyards promised throngs of workers, ports brimming with casks. But here, Yara enacted first sabotage. She convened Frosthelm and Sable Rime on foredeck, presenting scheme. Arbor home to golden wine. Valuable to living allies we convert. Spare storehouses. Freeze population lightly so harvest remains intact. She used word convert deliberately. Walkers loved conversions. They agreed. During assault on Vintown, Yara secretly redirected pockets of villagers through tunnels she discovered from earlier raiding days. Harrod led them past ice lines to coves where a single conventional longship waited, canvases hidden under nets. 50 souls, including a vintner family, who knew wildfire distillation in secret stills, escaped south. She wished them speed and silence. To mask missing numbers, she guided a second wave of whites into sea, claiming they wandered. Walkers did not count. They sensed only mass. Night after Arbor fell, Yara stood at stern. The sea, reflecting white moon, looked like endless parchment begging inscription. Harrod joined her. "You ferried 50. I would ferry more if gods allow. Do you yet believe in gods?" She considered. Night winds tugged locks of her hair crusted in salt frost. "If any watch, they sleep." Silence stretched until Harrod coughed. "We near Old Town by next day. Then dawn of choice. Will walkers allow infiltration without massacre? They'll permit so long as Citadel yields knowledge. I'll promise doors. And deliver?" She stared at Hightower's lighthouse faint on horizon, its beacon still burning yellow. "I'll deliver fire." Before first light, Yara assembled her captains, those still breathing. 7 lined quarterdeck, shivering not solely from cold. She spoke plainly. "We stand at brink. Walkers march inland, Euron scythes east coast. If Old Town falls, all southern realms freeze. You served me loyal. I ask one more service. When flames rise tonight, follow my banner of black salt cloth. Signal to strike." She unveiled a square of sail dyed with squid ink. "Until you see this, obey walkers." Some exchanged uneasy looks, but none refused. Ironborn thrived on impossible gambles. This was highest. High tide carried fleet into Whispering Sound mid-afternoon. The Citadel's sprawl of domes and towers shone creamy white, not yet frosted. Bells pealed alarm as watchers spied unnatural sails. Old Town's harbor boasted hundreds of ships, trading cogs from the free cities, Redwine war galleys, local fisher skiffs. Against ordinary Ironborn raid, formidable. Against creeping freeze, mere flotsam, awaiting sculpture. Walkers began weaving frost across water's skin. Galleys panicked, collided, masts snapping. War horns brayed from Hightower's ramparts. Flame catapults fired. Some struck ice, steam howling before freezing. Others smashed into white ranks, with limited effect. Yara advanced ahead of Frosthelm to Hightower's Gate Causeway atop Frozen Inlet. She raised empty hands, a gesture rehearsed, and called up in gravelly voice. "Maesters of the Citadel, parley. I hold knowledge of Walker's purpose. Open or perish. Nemonistati reign." From parapet, Archmaester Ambrose, ringed with Maester's heavy chains, shouted back, "Greyjoy spawn, why treat with dead?" "Because dead treat with all." She motioned to walkers behind. "They spare knowledge. They require wise minds." Emboss hesitated. Other maesters conferred. Meanwhile, Frosthelm studied the fortress like butcher giraffe cow dot. Yara measured heartbeats. She must secure entry before Walker impatience birthed slaughter. She raised voice. Citadel vault holds tomes that speak of the long night. Surrender them, and I guarantee your chains remain warm. Nay. Kelvin, bound but breathing beside her, added credibility. Archmaester. She spared me for my learning. Do likewise. Silence. Then gears ground. Portcullis lifted. A narrow bridge of wood extended. Yara signaled. Frosthelm gestured. Whites halted at perimeter, unnatural discipline. She, Harrog, Kelvin, and 4 Ironborn crossed into fortress. Inside, Citadel's halls pulsed with hush of fear. Candle flames flickered blue near entrance. Cold already seeped. Lead maesters guided them to scriptorium where rare scrolls lay pinned under glass. Yara requested volumes on Valyrian metallurgy, dragonglass, wildfire. Ambrose delivered reluctantly, eyes darting whenever Harrog's axe glinted. She leafed through brittle parchment, though comprehension limited. Kelvin read aloud snatches, instructions for dragonbone furnaces, formulae for pyromancer's green fire, diagrams of icebane runes carved into children's swords during Dawn Age. She memorized crucial sigils, but her true goal lay deeper, in Hightower's labyrinthine crypt where, legend said, lay bonded wildfire casks from Egan's conquests, sealed by high septon decree. With Ambrose's keys, she descended winding stairs. Harrog accompanied, along with 2 nervous maesters. In damp vault, they found row upon row of blackened stone jars sealed with 7-pointed wax. Yara pried one open. The air erupted green steam before cork replaced. She smiled for first time in weeks. Of Frosthelm's patience frayed. It stalked gait, impassive mask tilting. Maesters quailed. Yara ascended swiftly, laden with 2 jars in sack. Knowledge retrieved, she announced. Release Citadel's scribes to my custody, and I shall leave civilians unharmed. Emboss opened mouth to protest, but never spoke. Frosthelm strode forward, sword raised. Time, it hissed. A single word electric with frost. Its blade touched courtyard flagstone. Cold waves spidered across. Torches extinguished. Panic burst. Yara pivoted to Harrog. Banner, she whispered. He unfurled black salt cloth from belt, hoisting on spear point over parapet. Signal. Across harbor, Ironborn crews who still lived, saw, and rallied. They turned weapons not on townsfolk but on nearest walkers, feigning aid then stabbing at spines of ice. Some perished instantly as frost retaliated. Others felled a wight or 2, releasing thralls bound by that master. Inside Citadel, Yara sprung jar cork, hurled wildfire into Frosthelm's path. Green inferno whooshed, splashing creature. Flame fought frost viciously. For first time she heard walkers shriek, sound like glaciers shearing apart. Ice armor cracked, dripping as slush. Before it could recover, Harrog drove hidden dragonglass shard through its torso. The shard, though born of ice, met inner core of otherworldly crystal. Contact unleashed sonic crack. Frosthelm froze, fissured, exploded into glitter storm. Whites in courtyard spasmed, stumbling. Some collapsed dead truly. Others staggered, confused. Sable rhyme on Quay jerk too. Feeling loss of kin. Yara pressed advantage. She hurled second jar down staircase, to vault door now swarming with newly risen maesters. Explosion billowed upward, sending plume of green fire through interior shafts. The citadel became chimney. Flame blossomed from arrow slits, roared out roof like dragon breath. Heat wave pulsed across yard, ice retreated. Hightower's beacon above responded, flame brightening. Bells tolled as if cheering. Harrog seized Yara's arm. More jars. Vault full. She coughed smoke. But we must leave now. They raced through choking corridors, Kelvin clinging behind, chains clattering. Outside, Storm Daughter and Black Halberd fired scorpions loaded with netting of burning pitch onto ice galleys. Fire might fail on water, but when net wrapped sails of translucent ice, heat conducted downward, fracturing masts. Sabelrime raised arms to summon blizzard, yet before conjuring finished another net flew, smothering it in blazing tar. Creature reeled, screaming frost. Harrod bellowed and cut path through charmed whites, clearing lane to wharf. Yara shouted to Ironborn, "Retreat to conventional ships. Leave ice hulls to burn." Some obeyed, others continued brawl. Dock planks steamed, then froze, then steamed again as heat warred cold. Yara sprinted across gangway to a red wine galley recently captured. She severed mooring line. Sails already loosened. Wind gust. Actual warm wind from wildfire updraft filled canvas. For a brief moment, she felt old joys of pure seamanship. Hull bucking, salt spray, warm. On quay, whites still attacked townsfolk. She couldn't save all, but she could break chain of control. She scanned for Sabelrime, creature stumbling, half melting, yet shards knitting. She readied dragonglass dagger taken from vault display. With wild roar she vaulted rail back onto dock. Charged. The walker raised sword. She ducked, slashed across thigh. Cut hissed black. Sabelrime froze momentarily. She plunged blade into its chest. Cold burst outward, but dagger remained lodged, searing frost retreat like wound refusing clot. Creature sagged, still alive. She shoved flask of leftover wildfire from belt into fissure, and leapt away. Harrod yanked her to safety behind wrecked cart, as explosion tore walker apart, sending auroral spark shower skyward. Light across harbor changed, blue glow dimmed. Whites jerked, many collapsing inert. Others regained themselves, alive again though half frozen. Townsfolk cheered feebly through pain. On water, remaining ice galley attempted escape, but its underbody cracked where mainsail column melted. It listed, sinking under weight of unnatural crystal. Yara signaled her fleet with horn blast. 2 long, 1 short. The call for withdrawal northwest. Conventional ships, both captured from harbor and their original wooden hulls, followed out mouth of Honeywine River into Summer Sea. Behind them, Old Town burned green and gold but lived. Cities rarely rejoice invaders, yet this once, the bells rang gratitude to Ironborn for slaying worse fiends. She would savor irony later. On quarterdeck, Kelvin wept. Relief, exhaustion, maybe pride. Harrod slumped against rail, beard singed. Yara stood by wheel, knuckles white, staring at horizon where Euron somewhere sailed south, blind to fracture of plan. She felt no victory, only first step. Course? Harrod croaked. South into Redwine Straits, she answered after breath. Euron's path intersects there. We warn Southron fleets. Rally them. No. Euron won't parley. He will if offered fire. She touched dragonglass dagger's warm hilt, reclaimed before blast. And maybe his death, if gods wake. She looked toward sea, where dawn-tinted clouds rose peach. A living sun. Warmth brushed her cheek. Tears formed, not frozen. She turned to crew. For the living, she called. For every soul freed from blue eyes. Row. Oars dipped. Sails strained. Deep blue doom, now stripped of much ice along hull, lurched forward, no longer gliding on cursed current but riding honest wave. Its hum quieted to low murmur, as though some internal frost heart still beat, awaiting command. But Yara commanded now. Behind, Citadel's beacon blazed triple strength, illuminating plume of smoke, twisting heavenward like shattered column of once eternal winter, broken, but not yet ended. Ahead, the straits shimmered, unknown and perilous, but raw with possibility. Yara set jaw, feeling salt and flame sting her lips. She would carve path through night's long teeth, unfreezing hope, ship by ship, blade by blade, until even the sea itself remembered how to roar warm again.